Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 45, Generational Sports. As you can see, Connie he's on vacation. He's taking some well-earned time off, but we got Wise Cheese, Matt Skura joining us today. How you doing, Matt?
Doing good. Just hanging around, vacationing as well in California, hanging out with some family and, just enjoying life.
See, Connie, look at that. Matt is on vacation, but is still, willing to be here. Connie's too busy.
Hey, as long as Connie's doing good on the golf course.
Right.
As long as the vacation's worth it.
He's training for that matchup one day. Him and Wingo they're gonna have a match one day, so he's getting ready for that. But first, shout out to our sponsors, mybookie.ag. Use code USN100, doubles your first deposit up to $1,000. RX Hemp. If you're feeling sore after the gym, I know Connie's been getting those gains. I know he's a big fan of it. Use code RXHemp-USN, save 10% off your first order. And the first topic, I originally had it wrote down as, should Gane be like the first? Should he get the matchup against Ngannou? Well, after I wrote that down on the doc, they put out that Derek Lewis and Gane are going to fight for an interim belt, which, I mean, that's just the most UFC move that there is. They couldn't get Ngannou to fight, so they make up a belt so that they can keep the thing moving. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I just personally think, people look at it, it's a business. You have to try to make money. And this is one of those where it's like interim heavyweight title. I've never heard of someone's like, oh, yeah, you know what? I've never heard someone's like, all right, Muhammad Ali, we're just going to give you a interim heavyweight title. It's not the main thing, but it's just an interim. We're waiting for the main fight. That's literally like, it just smells money. Like that's literally all it is. They're waiting for the main guy to fight. Obviously, it did not work out, and they still have to make money somehow. So they just looked at it as, all right, interim heavyweight title. Why not? Let's make some millions of dollars and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they use all the money they make for this fight and give it to John Jones so we can get the heavyweight fight we really want, which is Ngannou versus John Jones. But I mean, what do you expect from the UFC? Gane's on a hot streak, remained undefeated, beat Volkov this weekend dominantly. I'm excited for the fight. I think it's going to be a good fight. They just make belts out of nowhere. Like two guys are fighting for a belt that neither of them actually even have. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the UFC for you. I'm excited for it. We got a lot of good fights coming up. We got 2 weeks until we get McGregor versus Poirier 3, which I know everyone's excited about. Who do you got in that, Matt?
Ooh, that it's a tough matchup, but I mean, I honestly feel like I might go with the Irishman. I might go with McGregor. Just to see if he's still got in the tank. Because, every time, like, you think of, like, McGregor going to a fight, like, now you're starting to look and seeing, like, could this be the last one? Because, I mean, you look at Conor McGregor, he's made himself a handsome amount of money. Like, does he have to be boxing? Not necessarily, because he's made all this money. But, just whenever you see McGregor out there, and I also just want to see what kind of smack talk he's got, because I always look forward to see what he's going to say on the mic, because he throws down some heavy roasts to his opponents. So I'm going to be looking forward to that. And especially with it being number 3, we'll see if whether it's third time's a charm, or let's hope it keeps up as great as it always has been.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be entertaining. Poirier got worked in the first round of the first fight, comes back, and he's just a different beast against Conor. So now it's about Conor bouncing back. But we'll move on to the NBA. It's been interesting couple of games, the Suns and Clippers. Clippers, obviously, without Kawhi Leonard. They lose this game. Paul George played well through, 3 quarters and about 8 minutes, and then just couldn't get it done late. What are your thoughts on Game 4?
My thoughts on Game 4 is this was a bad loss by the Clippers. I mean, you look at throughout the game, like in that fourth quarter, both teams struggled. Like it wasn't like the Suns struggled and the Clippers flourished. No, they both struggled. And I looked at the final scores, 84-80. I look at that and say, how are you the Clippers at home at Staples Center? You do the right thing. Holding the Suns to 84 points is not easy. you had to play great defense, especially, against Chris Paul and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. And even you look at Cameron Payne as well. So you hold the Phoenix Suns to 84 points. The defense did their job. You look at from the Clippers side of things, defense did their job. You hold them to 84 points. That's fantastic. But on the offensive side, if you're Paul George, man, that I don't care that you played great for 3 quarters and 8 minutes. How are you in crunch time? Because we saw in game 2 what happened. What happened? The Clippers were up by 1. The final 10 seconds of the game. Paul George is at the line. If he makes both free throws, it's a 3-point lead, and who knows what happens. If Phoenix makes a 3, so be it. But it puts you in a good position to be the series tied at 1 game apiece. But instead, what happens? He breaks not the first, but both free throws. Somehow, some way, it's 0.9 seconds left, and the Suns drew up one of the best postseason plays in recent memory. Besides the Kawhi Leonard buzzer beater shot to send the Raptors to the conference finals in 2019, this was probably one of the biggest shots since then, because you look at now it's a position to where the Suns are up 3-1. If Paul George hits those 2 free throws, we could very well be looking at a situation of where it's only tied at 2 games apiece heading to Phoenix. Instead, you're down 3-1. Home game for Phoenix tonight with the chance to close it out and go to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1993. I just look at it as a missed opportunity for the Clippers. And, that's one of those situations where you were already down 2-1. It's one thing, if the Clippers had a 2-1 series lead and they lose game 4, granted, it's tough, but you know what? It's tied at 2 games apiece. You just got to win 2 out of 3. But you were down 2-1 going into that series, and then you pull off that blunder, and it was a bad fourth quarter. Like there were some streaks to where, it wasn't just the Clippers, it was the Suns too. They both couldn't hit their shots. But when it came down to crunch time, we saw once again Paul George seemed to be like Aang in Avatar: The Last Airbender. When you needed him the most, he vanished. He vanished at the end of the game, and it's tough. It's tough to see because I love the guy. I love Paul George. I love what he does in the regular season. It's just when you think he gets rid of the name of Way Off P or Pandemic P, he pulls off stunts like he did last night where he couldn't hit shots and he couldn't hit the free throws. It's just one of those where it's disappointing from the Clippers side of things. Now, it has been done where teams have come back from down 3-1. It's not like one of those where it's like, oh, this series is over. It's one of those to where we'll see what happens. Like, teams have come back from down 3-1 before. It's just now that game 5, it's in Phoenix. It's not like you lost game 4 in Phoenix. No, you lost game 4 at home, and now you got to go on the road to Phoenix to try and force a game 6. So it's just one of those to where it's a bad loss by Phoenix. You also, in a way, have to give credit to Phoenix for holding them to 80 points and having Paul George not play as well. But, the Clippers, they had an opportunity to win this game, and they let it slip. And for this series, 3-1, it's going to be a tough hill to climb back from the Clippers. But they have been down 0-2 the last 2 series, so we'll see what happens. But they have not put themselves in a good position for game 5.
Yeah, in this game 4, they got a lot of breaks too. Down the stretch, 30 minutes ago, there was an out of bounds call that could have easily gone Phoenix's way, but it went to LA. And then when Paul George missed the first free throw, his first time at the line, he did a great job unintentionally missing it. DeMarcus Cousins gets the rebound and gets fouled, so they get 2 more shots, but they just couldn't finish it off. 3-1 late, they're just not safe anymore. We saw it last year. Utah blew it against Denver, and I do believe this Clippers team was up 3-1 against Denver as well and lost it. So it's tough to say 3-1 leads are safe anymore. Yeah, no Connie vibes that's what we're with today. But it's just 3-1. You can't be safe anymore. You have to still play your game. Just 10 years ago, not even 10 years ago, like before the Cavs came back, it was very, very safe to be up 3-1, but now it's not. If Kawhi was playing, I'd say they have a very good shot at winning it. But I don't know, just the way this Suns team is playing and defending them, I think they have a very good chance to close it out. But we'll move on to the other conference, Bucks Hawks. It's very tough to beat this Bucks team when Giannis and Middleton combined for 71 points. I mean, Middleton ties his career high at 38. It's very tough to beat him. What were your thoughts on this game?
And I agree with this. It's very hard to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, especially with how they're situated right now. I was watching the NBA on TNT post game. I felt like Charles Barkley summarized it perfectly. This game proved that the Milwaukee Bucks were just overall the better team. I mean, you look at Trae Young did everything he could. I mean, he scored 35 points. The rest, and then you look at the rest of their lineup, kind of struggled a little bit. Like Kevin Huerter struggled, only had 11 points. Bogdanovich only had 8. Capella only had 8. John Collins only had 13. I mean, yeah, Gallo off the bench had 18 points, but you're gonna need a little more from that on that side of things to beat Milwaukee. And you are definitely correct, Josh. When you have Chris Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo combined for 71 points, it's going to be very hard to beat, especially because you look at those two. That duo, in my opinion, is nearly like top 5 in the NBA. You look at top 5 duos in the NBA. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton are right up there. And Chris Middleton, he had the game of his life in the fourth quarter. I think there was a stat where it showed like Chris Middleton outscored the entire Atlanta Hawks roster in the fourth quarter, 20-17. So you look at when he does that, it's going to be very hard to beat. But it was game 3. It's not like it was one of those where it's like, oh, Atlanta's already down 2-1 and this series is over. No, Atlanta could still come back in the series. But I mean, you look at that was just it was hard to watch because you look at, and the thing with Atlanta is they had control of the game in the first half. Like you saw in the first half, Atlanta was thriving. They seemed to have control of the game, but we just kind of saw near the end of the game, Atlanta just simply ran out of gas. And you just hope, and obviously there's been some reports on Trae Young being probable for game 4, and I just look at it from a perspective of for the Bucks. This was a great win for Milwaukee. A nice 113-102 victory, and you also have to look at and say Chris Middleton delivered again. He's finally living up to the number 2 option because we've seen Chris Middleton in the past couple postseasons, he has not lived up to either the contract has been given to or the number 2 option that he's been billed as. So I love seeing how well Chris Middleton played because you look at Giannis, he dropped 33 points, but if you got Chris Middleton playing like that and dropping 38 points, it just adds another element that Atlanta has to try to counter because you look at Atlanta, you could play things perfectly. You could double Giannis, you could shut him down, you could not let him drive to the basket. But if Chris Middleton is out here dropping 30 points, that just means this series is going to get a lot harder for Atlanta. Now, in my personal opinion, the deal breaker is going to be game 4. How game 4 will be played between the Bucks and the Hawks tomorrow is going to tell the series. Because in my opinion, if the Bucks come out dominant and win game 4, this series is a wrap. And we'll probably get a Bucks-Suns NBA Finals. But if the Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young, if he plays through his injury, comes through, fights back, and the series is tied at 2 games apiece, going back to Milwaukee for game 5, it's going to be anybody's game. But overall, I just look at it as it was a great win by Milwaukee, a good must-win. The set the tone, in Atlanta, because we saw the Hawks take game 1 from Milwaukee, so it was only fitting that Milwaukee had to take the home field that Atlanta had at game 3. So let's hope they keep this up. Let's hope this isn't a Wisconsin sports tradition where they seem to give you hope and then they just crash and burn in the playoffs like, my Green Bay Packers last 2 NFC championship games. So let's hope things play out differently for Milwaukee, but they've set the tone. They have a 2-1 series lead, and let's see how they play it out for game 4. And for the Atlanta Hawks side of things, Trae Young has to play in game 4. Because if Trae Young doesn't play in game 4, this series, like Kenny Smith would say, it's over, ladies and gentlemen. It will be over if Trae Young does not play in game 4.
Yeah, I agree. This Bucks team, I mean, Giannis basically just dominates for 3.5 quarters, but Middleton's really their closer. If he's not hitting shots at the end of the game, when it's a close game, there's really no hope for them to win because with Giannis, he can attack the hoop, but you don't want him at the line late game. He's just not a guy you want shooting free throws. You need Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday to hit those shots, and when Chris Middleton's hitting them, they're basically unbeatable because Giannis is going to do his thing, and if Middleton's doing his, they're one of the best duos in the league. For the Hawks, their big accusation this year outside of Gallinari was Bogdan Bogdanovic, and he has been awful for them these past two series. Him and Herter were terrible. I think they were combined like 7 of 24 or something. They got to pick it up. Trey did all he can. He dropped 35. He played really well. It's just they need help from their other shooters. Their other guys that Trey gets open, gets the ball to. They got to be able to hit their shots, and Bogdanovic has not been able to do that for them lately. So hopefully he can step up if Trey is, he's going to be hobbled next game. I assume he's going to play just because I think he's the guy that is not going to want to sit out regardless of the injury, but he's not going to be 100%. So they're going to need other guys to step up. But we'll move on. This offseason, well, not even the offseason yet, I don't think there's ever been more intriguing coaching jobs than there are this year. I mean, they had the Celtics job, the Mavericks job, the Pelicans job, just so many open jobs. But so far we have Ime Udoka goes to Boston, Jason Kidd to Dallas, Rick Carlisle to Indiana, and who is the other one?
Chauncey Billups to the Pacers, Blazers.
Yeah, so I mean these are great signings. I think all these guys are. What do you think is the best signing so far, Matt?
Best signing so far, if I had to judge between those, I would honestly say it would be Rick Carlisle to the Indiana Pacers. The reason being is Rick Carlisle, he's a champion head coach, and you look at he had a lot of success in Dallas. Now, granted, they had many years where they missed the postseason, but he won a championship. He's made a couple postseason runs, and I just think Indiana, they're in a way trying to find the right coach because I mean you look at ever since really Frank Vogel was there and they made those back-to-back conference finals appearance when it was peak Paul George, when he was actually playoff P, ever since Frank Vogel left Indiana, they really haven't found the right guy. Now, Nate McMillan, granted, he's doing a fantastic job with the Atlanta Hawks right now, but when he was with the Pacers, he was pretty much a one-and-done coach. He was a pretty much get to the playoffs, first round exit. Get to the playoffs, first round exit. Get to playoffs, first round exit. It wasn't the same. It wasn't the same Pacers like in the early 2010s when they were duking it out with LeBron James and the Miami Heat. It wasn't like that. So, I just hope that Rick Carlisle is the right guy for Indiana. I personally think he will be, especially because I believe they had a stat where it was earlier in Rick Carlisle's career. I think before he went to Dallas, I think there was a thing where like he either at one point as a player played for the Pacers or was a coach of the Pacers at one point. So it's one of those where as long as Rick Carlisle can help the Pacers do well, because the Pacers have always been one of those teams to where they've always been stuck in the middle. They were never good enough to win the East, but they were never horrible enough before this year to lose to, in a way, tank to get a top pick. And I mean, you look at the Pacers, they have some good pieces. I mean, Domantas Sabonis is still there, and you just have to surround him around with some great guys. You still have Malcolm Brogdon, you still got Jeremy Lamb still there. So Indiana, they have some pieces. We'll just see if Rick Carlisle could be a great fit, which I believe he will be, especially with his championship pedigree as a head coach in Dallas. Him being able to work with Luka Doncic, so he kind of knows how to find out where his star is, and it will most likely be Domantas Sabonis. And I just hope that the Indiana Pacers with Rick Carlisle could, in a way, get over the hump. Maybe win a playoff series. Maybe even win 2. See what happens there. But out of all those coaching hires, I would go with Rick Carlisle and the Indiana Pacers just because Rick Carlisle has proven and done it with Dallas, winning a championship, winning many playoff series. And you look at with the other head coaches, you look at Chauncey Billups, he's a new head coach. It'll be his first time head coach. Jason Kidd, didn't really have a lot of good stints as a head coach. Wasn't really good, and I believe he coached Brooklyn
and
for a little
Milwaukee.
Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Like, you look at, like, a lot of people forget, before Mike Budenholzer came into Milwaukee, as we see them right now, Jason Kidd was the head coach of Milwaukee, and they would get to the playoffs, but we kind of knew, like, yeah, they'll be one and done. You know, they're like a 6-7 seed. You know, now granted, he did help develop Giannis's game a little bit, but it's one of those where when Jason Kidd was the coach of the Bucks, you kind of knew, all right, first round exit, maybe win a playoff series at best. So I just hope Rick Carlisle does well in Indiana. I think he will. And, you know, I just hope they, one, build a right team, and two, hopefully Indiana could get over the hump and maybe be competitive and try and win a playoff series.
Yeah, I think Carlisle signing is really good. You know, the last time he was in Indiana, the Malice at the Palace, you know, Reggie Miller and all those players over there. So I think it's a good signing. They got a nice squad over there, but it just always seems like they're okay with being middle of the pack. They never want to make that move to become contenders. Hopefully signing Rick Carlisle makes them make a move to go get somebody to put them in a position to try to compete for a championship. But my favorite signing is definitely Ime Udoka to the Celtics. I think he's perfect for what they need. Brad Stevens he's going to get your team running right, and you guys are going to win games, but he's not going to help like bring individual players to another level. I think Ime Udoka, being a former player and you know, having been able to learn under a great coach, I think he's going to be able to take Tatum and Brown to a whole nother level. I think they're going to improve individually, and I also think he can be a great head coach just from a scheme and in the team aspect. But I just think that's exactly what they needed. Everyone loved Brad Stevens. I remember a few years ago they were debating, like, would you rather have another star on your team or Brad Stevens? It's like it's not the same anymore. But I think the most intriguing job is still out there. You know, New Orleans with Zion and Ingram and all them. I think that job's still really intriguing, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But moving on to something that's been going crazy lately on social media, Damian Lillard, super frustrated with Portland, rightfully so. I mean, he's been there for a long time. He's given them their all. He's put up insane games and still never been able to make a finals run. But there's been a lot of rumors on teams. See nothing but jersey swaps on Twitter. Matt, what's your thoughts on this whole Damian Lillard drama?
I would say that the drama is interesting. I thought for sure when the Blazers hired Chauncey Billups, I thought it would seek Damian Lillard's approval, because I felt like he was I believe one of the finalists, because I think Damian Lillard said, I would either love Jason Kidd or Chauncey Billups. If I'm mistaken, it was one of those two. So I thought Portland did the right thing to get Chauncey Billups, but I mean, I feel like Dame has a right to be upset. You know, he's been in the league, what is it, almost 9 years, 8 or 9 years with Portland. And, you know, besides the one conference finals run in 2019, they really haven't done anything with Damian Lillard. They've been pretty much first round exit, maybe win a playoff series, and that's about it. And I think at some point, like you mentioned, Josh, eventually, you know, there comes a point where like loyalty is, you know, it's like a side piece. Like, look at Anthony Davis when he was in New Orleans. He spent 7 years with the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Pelicans couldn't get it right. They only made the playoffs twice with Anthony Davis and only won one playoff series, and rightfully so, he won it out. And what happens? First year he gets out of the Pelicans, he wins a championship on the Lakers. With Damian Lillard, it's a little on the tougher side, because you look at, he already has his contract locked up. With Anthony Davis, he had 1 year left, and if you were the Pelicans at the time, you got 1 year. You look at AD, 1 year, you could move on easily from a 1 year deal. With Damian Lillard's contract, it's kind of one of those where he's locked in long term. I believe it's like four years. His contract remaining is around like 4 years. So it's one of those where it's going to be harder to move Damian Lillard just because of that long-term contract. Now, if he had 1 year left on his deal, I would say it'd be a lot easier to move Damian Lillard. But I just think with him having 4 years on that contract, it's going to be hard. It's going to be harder for them to move on. And I think Portland could look at it as in a way of all right, we want to keep Dame happy, and if that's willing to move on from CJ McCollum and get him another different piece, like maybe find a way to get Bradley Beal to Portland instead, then by all means go for it. But it's just one of those where I understand Dame's frustration because he pours his heart, sweat, and soul, like blood, sweat, and tears into the court. Like every time he plays for the Blazers, he gives it his all. He gives his all out. Anytime he's on the court, he gives it his all. And rightfully so. He deserves a championship. He deserves to have a team that's competed for a championship. And I just hope the Trailblazers get it right, because it's one of those where if Portland doesn't get it right, if they don't either add another piece to what the Blazers already have or make an aggressive move to get another piece, then it's going to be one of those where it's going to be hard during the season. And, eventually he could be traded at the trade deadline. If anything, his value is at a high point right now, but if the drama keeps on going, it could eventually get lower. Even though it is Damian Lillard, you also have to look at it from a team perspective of, I have to take on his contract. I got to be willing to give up a large contract, and I hope he keeps up his fantastic play like he has been right now. So we'll see what happens in Portland. I hope everything gets settled there, and we'll see what happens. But Portland is definitely in a sticky situation. We'll see how they handle it, and we'll see what exactly they do, because Damian Lillard, he has the power to where if he wants out and he said he's not going to return, he won't return. Like he will stand by his words.
Yeah, I think Dame's played his last game in Portland. I don't see any reason for him to want to come back. He's a superstar in his prime, and they hire a first-year head coach. That's a risky move that you can't make with a superstar who's already vocalized his frustration with them multiple times. So I think that was a bad move. I think Chauncey is going to turn out to be a fine coach for them. He's got a 5-year deal. I think he'll do right by them, but I also think it's just not right now. They should have gone after a coach that has proven to have success in coaching, not a first-year guy. I think that at some point he's just got to say, I love you, Portland. I've given you everything. I mean, I've had to witness them end my team season from half court and then literally wave goodbye to us. So he's a guy that deserves a chance to compete for a title, and I think he's going to get that. I'm going to list some teams that I really think I'm going to list best fit for him to where he could go there and the team, it's the spots open for him, and then the teams that could give the best package for him. For his best fit, I think Boston. I think they kind of fit both of those. You start a package surrounding around Jaylen Brown. I think that's a perfect package to start with. Obviously, they have players like Romeo Langford, Peyton Pritchard, Robert Williams, and even Marcus Smart possibly. I think they could put together a nice package, and I think they definitely need a point guard now that Kemba is gone. And I think Tatum and Dame could make an excellent duo. Obviously, all you see is a picture of him in LA. That'd be a great fit. I don't know how they get him there. They have no assets. I don't think Kyle Kuzma on the 21st pick is enough for Damian Lillard. It's just not going to get it done. But I do think that fit would be awesome. And just as a basketball fan, I love a Brooklyn versus LA final with these big three. That'd be amazing. Philly, I think they kind of fit both of those roles too. If you trade Ben Simmons for him, that's a good starting point for a trade package. I think also if you trade away Ben Simmons as Philly, you need a point guard. Damian and Joel, I think, are both guys that are tired of falling out of the playoffs when they have good seasons by themselves. So I think you bring them together. I think they could do something special. And then Dallas, Luka and Dame is just something that I'd be really interested to see. Just two guys that take the craziest shots and make the craziest shots. I think that'd be awesome. But then you talk about best offer, because obviously Portland's not just going to take ugly trades. They're going to make sure they get their return for their superstar. I think a team no one's talking about that really should make a move is New Orleans. Zion's family already raised concerns, says they don't want him there anymore. if you want Zion to have a reason to stay, you should try and get him Damian Lillard while you can. I think they have good starting points, with Brandon Ingram. They got young players like Kira Lewis, Nickeil Walker-Alexander, who could be in that package as well. They have picks from the Lakers trade for Anthony Davis, so they have great assets to try and get him. And I think that would make Zion consider staying there long term. So I think they're a team that isn't talked about enough in being in the Dame sweepstakes. New York, obviously, they have assets. They have it's New York. Dame would love to play there. I think they could put together a nice package, and I do think that's somewhere. I think Dame wants to be in a bigger market, and being New York is the biggest market possible in the NBA. And then Toronto and Miami both have players that are going to move on. I think Kyle Lowry is probably done in Toronto with their roster with Van Vliet and Siakam and play a big role there. And obviously Miami, they have young assets too. They have picks, and I think Jimmy, Bam, and Dame would make a crazy good trio. I think they can make another finals run with that. But there's so many teams out there that have good reason to get them. It's just about who's gonna give the best package. I do think he's done there though. I can't see him play. I wouldn't if I was him. I know he's the most loyal player, one of the most loyal players in the game. At some point you gotta be selfish. You gotta be like, hey, I'm done, bro. I'm not playing here if you guys aren't gonna do shit for me. CJ McCollum and Yusuf Nurkic are not enough to make me want to stay there. I mean, they've tried it. It just hasn't worked. They made it to the conference finals one time, but it's not enough to make it all the way to the finals and win it all. There's too many good teams in this league right now to have CJ as your number 2 and win it all. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, those are all great options that you pointed out. If I were to say best fit, I would agree with you on the sides of obviously, of course, the Lakers, no brainer, it would be the best fit. But like we both mentioned earlier, what assets are you going to give up? Portland is not. They are not going to say, oh, Kyle Kuzma, a 21st overall pick, and then maybe like a 2026 first round pick. Sign me up for that. No. They're not. They're going to look at the Lakers and they're going to laugh. It's like, yeah. Just give me a guy who worries more about his hair than his actual game. No thanks. And I'd agree. I agree with you as well. I would love to see Damian Lillard in Philadelphia. I think if there are teams that have the right assets to be able to trade, you are right on the fronts of the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. In my opinion, I feel like for Portland, it depends on what you want to do. If you trade Damian Lillard, do you still want to try to compete? Because if they still want to try to compete, they're going to look at that Philadelphia offer and say, Ben Simmons, we'll take Ben Simmons. But if they look at Damian Lillard and say, you know what, we had our chance to try and win a title. That window's shut. Let's just start a rebuild. I think they'll look at more options of where they have younger guys. Like the New York Knicks, they have some young assets they could give up. You have the Boston Celtics. They have some young guys that they could still give up and trade. So I just think on Portland's side, it all depends on what they want to do. Like if they do so, trade Damian Lillard, are you going to instantly use those assets to kick into a full-on rebuild and then trade CJ with Nurkic and all of that? Or are you still going to have that false hope of, hey, we'll take a guy with no jump shot at Ben Simmons. Let's go after him with CJ McCollum, and maybe we'll get over the hump with Chauncey Billups. If you want to go that route, by all means, go for it. I personally think if I'm the Trailblazers, if I'm trading Damian Lillard, that means rebuild is beginning. We have Billups for 5 years. Let's just trade Damian Lillard, trade CJ McCollum, trade Nurkic. Just get a young guys, build a culture with Chauncey Billups as the head coach. Let him decide, who he wants, because he had coach as well. He's going to coach the team as well. It's one thing to where, the GM builds the team, but the GM also has to kind of talk to the head coach and say like, hey, you are going to be coaching this team, for the next 3 to 5 years. Who do you want? Who do you think you can coach well with? Because if Chauncey Billups says, you know what, Ben Simmons, yeah, he doesn't have a jump shot now, but I feel like I can fix him. I can help him out. Then Portland's going to look at Philadelphia and say, hey, if you can give us Ben Simmons maybe throw in Matisse Thybulle, and maybe throw in 2 to 3 first-round picks, then by all means go for it. Now, I think if Damian Lillard wants to win a championship, I would tell the Portland front office, trade me to Boston or trade me to Miami. Because there's one thing about Boston is they have, for Portland side, they have the young assets like you mentioned earlier, Josh, and they also have enough to compete. Like, I mean, you look at, they have enough talent to where they don't even have to touch Tatum or Brown. And they still have good enough young assets to trade. Like you mentioned, with Romeo Langford, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams. They could throw those guys in. They could throw in a couple picks and add in Dame Lillard, and they would be instantly right back into that title conversation. Because I'm telling you, with a big three of Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, that's a championship trio right there. That has enough to get you to the conference finals and possibly the NBA finals. Now, I would also throw in, like you mentioned earlier, the Miami Heat. Can you imagine? You get to be in Miami, Florida, not have to worry about any state taxes, beautiful beaches, beautiful women out there too. And you know, it's one of those to where, and you get paired up with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. You know, now that would be an ultimate trio, because I mean, you look at, I personally believe if he goes down there in Miami, and you also have to think they call Pat Riley the Godfather for a reason. He finds a way to, one, pull magic out of his ass, and two, he's kind of like Al Davis. He just finds a way to just win, baby, whether that's make the playoffs or, you know, have winning records. And they still have a great head coach in Eric Spoelstra, who's been there, done that. He's won multiple championships. He's coached great players like Dwayne Wade, like LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. He knows how to coach great players. So Damian Lillard, if you ever listen to this, I mean, if we got Trey Wingo on here, there's a good chance maybe you could listen to this as well. Tell the Portland Trail Blazers front office, send me to Boston or send me down to South Beach in Miami.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that if you're trading Dame, might as well get rid of everything. I think you get good value out of CJ. I definitely think there are teams out there like Philly that would give up some things to get him on their team. Nurkic, there are definitely teams out there that could use a big man. And then you give the ball to Anthony Simons and you see what he can do out there, and you draft young players and you see how Chauncey does. I just think if Dame's gone, there's no point in trying to compete. Even if you do get good assets back from another team, they're not Damian Lillard. If Dame couldn't get it done, the return is not going to get it done either.
Yeah, and you also, I'm sorry to interrupt, you also have to look and say, if you're Portland, why would you want to try to compete without Damian Lillard? Because, I mean, you look at on the Western Conference, you're not getting past the Lakers. Yeah, Lakers got bounced in the first round earlier this year, but they're going to be back and healthy. The Clippers, they're in the conference finals right now. You really think they're going to get past them? No. Phoenix Suns are here to stay. As long as Chris Paul is in Phoenix, they're going to be competing for a while. So they're still up there. You also got to look at the Utah Jazz. I mean, look at that. That's 4 teams right there. That's your top 4 in the Western Conference. That would literally be your top 4 in the Western Conference next year. It would be Lakers, Clippers, Suns, and then either the Jazz, or don't even discount the fact of the Denver Nuggets. I mean, you look at those are 5 teams right there, and then you look at Portland. You want to try to get in the playoffs, you'll be in the 6th seed. That's a first round exit. Because, I mean, you look at the top 3 teams, you're not beating those top 3 teams. So, like you mentioned, Josh, why try and compete? If you couldn't get it done with Damian Lillard, then you're not getting it done with CJ McCollum. That's just not how it works. Now, if somehow miraculously they do, I'd feel bad for Dame, just because they're like, wow, you decided to win now and not there. Like, come on, what are we doing, Portland? But if I personally believe they should just go full rebuild. If they trade Damian Lillard, it means it's time for a rebuild. I don't care if, like, you look at Philly and say, hey, we'll take Ben Simmons. You're not going to win with Ben Simmons and CJ McCollum. If Ben Simmons couldn't find a way to win with Joel Embiid or hit a jump shot, like hell, you and I probably have a better jump shot than Ben Simmons, and that's saying something. Like it's outright atrocious. Like I will never get out of my head Ben Simmons having a wide open dunk, and that fool passes it. How are you going to pass a wide open dunk? Like I only do that because I can't jump high enough to dunk it, but at least I would go up for a layup. How are you going to be literally like here and the basket is a couple feet to the right and up above? How are you going to sit up there, 6'10", point guard, and be like, nah, I'm going to pass it to Matisse Thybulle, who's double teamed, they'll get fouled. It makes no sense. So for the Portland Trailblazers, just trade Dame, send him to Boston or Miami, and just kickstart your rebuild.
Yeah, I think they're going to be in a rebuild pretty quickly. Speaking of rebuilds, our next topic is the NBA draft lottery, which happened last week. I never watched the draft lottery, but it was basically the same as watching an Olympics 100-meter sprint. That was the quickest thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen so many teams' fate decided in basically under a minute. It went by so fast. The Pistons lucked out. Pistons and Raptors really lucked out. Pistons get the number 1 pick. Raptors jumped up to 4. In my opinion, the two biggest losers of the night were my Thunder and the Chicago Bulls. Lost out on their pick. I think those are probably the two biggest losers. What were your thoughts on the lottery?
I thought the lottery was very interesting. I mean, I'd have to look at Detroit. They finally something went their way. I mean, they were years past where Detroit was projected top 4, and yet they get the 6th pick or the 8th pick. They just found a way to fall short. But I mean, hey, if I'm the Pistons, if I'm ever the lottery again, I'm sending Ben Wallace back up there because if Big Ben Wallace gets me the number 1 overall pick, I'm sorry, that's my good luck charm. That reminded me of like the Lakers when Kyle Kuzma had that lucky purple jacket and they got up all the way up to number 4. I'm just like, if we're ever in the lottery again, Kuzma, that's when your time shines. And I also have to look at it. And for your Oklahoma City Thunder getting number 6, I can understand how that'd be disappointing just because, I mean, you really wanted like the top 5 pick. Like you wanted to be in the top 5.
And also, if Houston fell out of the top 4, we got their pick too. So it was tough.
Yeah, but it's one of those to where, I mean, you look at Oklahoma City, they got so many draft picks. I mean, you got the 6th pick, you got the 16th pick this year. I think they'll knowing Sam Presti, because that's one thing Sam Presti knows how to do. He knows how to draft. I mean, he drafted in 3 straight years. Keep in mind, or I'd say even possibly 4 straight years. He drafted Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Serge Ibaka. He handpicked, drafted all those players. So if there's one thing he knows how to do, he knows how to draft well. And, you know, I think he'll find a way to get somebody good at number 6. But I will agree on the front of you really needed like the top 5 pick. Like if the Thunder were in the top 5, it would be golden and everything would be good. But just falling out at number 6, I can understand how that would be disappointing because you would miss out on guys like a Evan Mobley or a Cade Cunningham or just those kind of assets like that. So I can understand missing out on that front. Now, I would also have to say, you know, Cleveland could be a big winner as well, getting the 3rd overall pick. I mean, you look at because what you can do is you get that 3rd overall pick. If you want to move on from Colin Sexton and get some assets for him, that 3rd pick, you got Jalen Green or Jalen Suggs looking at you at number 3. You could look at that and say, Colin Sexton, as much as we love you, we're going to trade you and we're going to get more picks and help further improve the rebuild. And we'll just take a guy in Suggs who can literally be like you or even possibly even better than. But I also have to look at Orlando. I have to also say Orlando is a big winner in the draft. I mean, you're talking they got 2 picks in the top 10. They had their own pick at number 5, and they lucked out getting Chicago's number 8 overall pick. That is fantastic luck that they were able to pull right there. Because, I mean, you now have a chance to get not only 1 franchise piece, you have a chance to get 2 franchise pieces. And it could help further improve your rebuild that you already have. Like you already have Mo Bamba there. He could be your starting center. Or unless somehow, some way, Evan Mobley falls to number 5. You know, that'd be the only time I would see them take it to center. But, I mean, you got Mo Bamba there. I think Markelle Fultz is still there, if I'm not mistaken. You know, you could look at number 5 and say, hey, you know, if Jalen Green or if Suggs is somehow still there, why not? Why not take a chance on him? Why not get another shooting guard that you could pair him up with? And, you know, and hell, maybe if you wanted to look at a small forward, maybe Scotty Barnes is still there at number 5 or number 8. You could look at those and say, hey, you know what? Why not get those? So I just think personally, like the big winners are definitely like you mentioned, the Detroit Pistons, the Toronto Raptors getting that 4th overall pick. That's a huge win for them because now what they can do is if there's a franchise point guard there, you could draft him. You could draft that future point guard. You could trade Kyle Lowry, kiss him goodbye, say thank you for everything that you've done for the Toronto Raptors. Probably one of the greatest Raptors in franchise history.
The greatest.
You think he's greater than Vince Carter or T-Mac or Chris Bosh?
He's the only one that got them a ring. He's been there. He's been great for them. I think Kyle Lowry is definitely the greatest Raptor of all time. Vince is close, but it's Kyle.
Well, then would you also throw in Kawhi Leonard as well, even though he was only there for a year, but just because he brought him a championship?
He's always going to be loved by Toronto for this, but he's not up there. Yeah, I'd put DeMar above a Kawhi before. It's just 1 year he got them a ring. I get that, but just the loyalty wasn't there.
Yeah.
Connie.
Hey, you better have done good. You better have done good on a golf course, Connie, because if you shot over 100, I would have been very disappointed. You better have shot under 100 on the golf course today. But yeah, so we'll see what Toronto's able to do. I also am looking forward to Golden State, man. You could also say Golden State's a big winner in this draft because they got the 14th pick, which was their pick, and they got the Timberwolves pick, which was number 7. So I mean, you now got the 14th and the 7th pick, and you know the Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors are going to be up there. They're going to be one of those teams where like, hey, we got the 7th pick, we got the 14th pick, we got Andrew Wiggins. I mean, we could see what kind of trade assets we could get. Maybe Bradley Beal comes to town. Maybe no jump shot Ben Simmons with Draymond Green for one of like the best defensive duels of all time. Maybe somewhere along those lines, and we'll see what happens there. And then we look at this. Oops, I'm sorry, wrong one. Look at that. Come on. Hey, you know what? At least you were close. Saw 102. We'll take that. What you think, Josh? Do you think you could shoot better than 102?
I don't know shit about golf, bro. Is that bad? I don't know shit.
I mean, for a beginner, it's okay. If you were like a pro golfer, it'd be horrible. But for a beginner like Anthony, it's good. And then also, I'd like to thank Michael for joining it. Dame to the Heat. We did discuss it earlier. We threw out Damian Lillard to the Heat as a possible viable option. If Miami has the assets to do it, like they got guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson who could get it done. And Josh and I kind of both agreed that Miami Heat, if they get Damian Lillard with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, that they're going to be an instant championship contender, a team to beat, kind of like Brooklyn or Milwaukee is. Then Ben Simmons with the 14th pick. I would say that would be interesting. What do you think, Josh? If the Warriors were to say, you know what, if Philadelphia were to say, you know what, we'll just take the 14th pick and Andrew Wiggins, and then we'll just give you Ben Simmons and a draft pick. If you're the Warriors, what would you say to that?
If I'm Philly, I'm saying hell no. Ben Simmons, I get it, he sucked, but his value is still very high, way higher than Wiggins in a 14th pick. That's not enough to get Ben Simmons. I still believe in Ben. I don't think his performance this postseason really is who he is, but we'll see. Daryl Morey's a crazy man, so maybe
he is a crazy man. I also want to throw out, I would honestly say another loser has to be the Pelicans getting the 10th pick. I mean, you look with all the Zion Williamson drama that's going on in the offseason. And I think there's a meme where it's like the lady for the Pelicans, I would say, she just kind of gave like an old like sigh look or just like a just one of those like that's how I felt like the Pelicans. Just like you had all the drama that was going on with Zion in the offseason. And what happens? You get the 10th pick. Like the NBA gods look at you and say, congratulations, all of your Zion Williamson drama. Here is 10th pick. And the 10th pick is always hard because it's one of those where you miss out on the top franchise stars like a Zion or like a John Morant, because you miss those out because those guys are going to be falling at number 10. I mean, unless if the Pelicans pull off a trade and move up in the draft, they're not really going to get – I mean, obviously you're still in the top 10, so you can still get a franchise piece, but it's not going to be like the big name franchise piece like we see in Luka Doncic or Trae Young or that sort of a deal. So we'll have to see what the Pelicans can do with the 10th overall pick. But overall, Josh, you pretty much hit it on the money. The main winners are no-brainers. Detroit Pistons, that's a winner. Toronto's a big winner. Orlando's a big winner. Can you imagine that? That's almost like some NBA 2K type beat where you're on my league and you're like, hey, I'll get 2 picks in the top 10. Bam, look at that. And what does Orlando do? They get 2 picks in the top 10. I'm also interested to see what the hell your Oklahoma City Thunder are going to do. You got 3 first-round picks this year. You got the 6th pick, the 16th pick, and the 18th pick. And since you're a diehard fan, I kind of want to ask you this question, Josh. What do you think your Oklahoma City Thunder are going to do with those 3 first-round picks? Are you going to trade and get some more assets, or are you just going to simply say, you know what, we got young pieces, let's just draft our young players, and let's just see what happens?
I definitely think a trade is coming. We have 7 total picks this year. I don't see us bringing on 7 players to the roster. I could see us keeping 6 and 16. But I could see us moving on. I could see us taking a Ben Simmons deal. I could see us doing something like that would offer something. But I don't know. I definitely think 6 is a huge spot for us because this draft is very deep. So I think we at least use 2 of our first-round picks because I think there's going to be great talent at 16 as well. But 18 and I think we have 36 – I think we have 55 and 56, something crazy like that. But we have 7 picks this year. I don't see us keeping them all, and we know how Sam Presti moves. So there's definitely going to be some trades happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there definitely will be some trades happen. I think it'll be interesting to see kind of like what your Oklahoma City Thunder will do at number 6 because I think that's going to set the tone. Because you look at you just mentioned.
Let's predict our top 5 picks. Let's do that now. So who you got going number 1? I think we can both agree.
Ooh, number 1 overall, I would have to say it's Cade Cunningham.
You can't unless you trade the first-round pick. You can't not take Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, Cade Cunningham is one of those players to where I don't care if the Pistons have another point guard. He is by far the best player in the draft. You have to take him, no other options, and you just have to work your way around it. You know, that's just one of those where, like, say if the Pistons had another point guard, like I believe they have one. I believe his name is Killian Hayes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have Killian Hayes, but Cade Cunningham is right there. You tell Killian Hayes, all right, Killian, you're either going to be – well, they're going to switch you to a shooting guard or you're going to be a backup point guard.
Yeah. I also got Cade. Number 2, I think Evan Mobley is also a player you just can't pass on. Even though they have Christian Wood, I still think they take Evan Mobley.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I believe they're going to go with Evan Mobley. I feel like you need that next big man because in my honest opinion, we look at the Houston Rockets. Besides Hakeem Olajuwon and Yao Ming, they haven't really had that next big man piece, that power forward or center type of guy. Evan Mobley out of USC, he could very well potentially be that guy. He has the capabilities to be potentially the next great center if he is drafted by Houston. And I believe if I'm Houston, I would say go for it because, I mean, you look at if you're not going to draft Evan Mobley, if anything, it would have to be Jalen Suggs out of Gonzaga, the shooting guard out of Gonzaga. And even if you draft shooting guard, it wouldn't really make sense because you just have, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's Kevin Porter. You just traded for Kevin Porter Jr. from Cleveland, and he's blossomed well. So it really wouldn't make sense to draft Jalen Suggs. It only makes sense for Houston to draft Evan Mobley because if you're Houston, you have to draft a need, not a want. Now, if somehow, some way Detroit messes us up like they did with Darko Milicic and they don't take Cade Cunningham at number 1, if I'm Houston, scoop it up, and I'll take it. I'll find a way to work with John Wall. I'll find a way to make it work. But if Evan Mobley's there at number 2 and Cade Cunningham is taken, if I'm the Houston Rockets, you better take Evan Mobley because if you don't take Evan Mobley, you're missing out on possibly one of the best centers in the draft and could potentially be one of the best centers in the near future.
Yeah, I agree. At number 3, Cleveland, I don't think they're breaking up Sexland. I just don't. I think that duo is really nice. They had a core last year, so I think they look to trade this pick, move back in the draft, give a team like New Orleans who might want that number 3 spot to get a replacement guard if Lonzo does leave, because I think the best players available at 3 and 4 are Jalen Suggs and Jalen Green, and I don't think Cleveland needs either of them unless they're dead set on trading Colin Sexton. So I think they look to to move back, I don't think they select someone here. And if New Orleans does move up, I like Jalen Green more than Jalen Suggs. I think he has more potential. I think he's a better defender, even though both of them are great defenders. I think Jalen Green would be the number 3 pick.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you as well. I could very well see the Cleveland Cavaliers possibly trading down in the selection. I mean, here's the only way I would see Cleveland drafting at number 3. If Evan Mobley is there at number 3, that would be the only time I would see Cleveland picking. But I think Cleveland, they're looking at the 3rd pick, and I honestly say they're probably the ones be calling for trades. They'll probably be calling, like Oklahoma City and Sam Presti and say, hey, would you like to move up to number 3? Just simply swap your 3rd and 6th pick, and we'll call it a day. And they could possibly even, like you mentioned, look at the New Orleans Pelicans and say, hey, you give us the 10th pick and another 1st, and we'll give you the 3rd pick. And, the Pelicans, they could draft a young piece, or maybe what they could even do even better, they could use that 3rd overall pick if they want to entice Damian Lillard to come to New Orleans. They could use that 3rd pick that they have with Portland and say, hey, you want to start your rebuild early? We'll give you a number 3 overall pick, and you send us Dame. And look at that. You got yourself a done deal. Both parties would be happy. Portland will get their 3rd pick and start their rebuild. Zion gets Dame, and then both parties will be happy. But on the side note of if Cleveland does stay at number 3 and do draft, and Evan Mobley and Cade Cunningham are taken, I do believe it will be either Jalen Green or Jalen Suggs. And I just think they'll look at Colin Sexton and say they will either trade him, or they'll just look at Colin and say, you're our main guy, Colin Sexton, but we're gonna shuffle you in between with either Jalen Green or Jalen Suggs. I would even mention it maybe a little further ahead, but I think the 3rd and 4th picks, it's going to be Green or Suggs. Either one of those two. It's either going to go Suggs Green or it's going to go Green Suggs. Either one of those two.
Yeah, I agree. I think Toronto is moving on from Kyle Lowry. They're going to need a guy alongside the backcourt with Fred VanVleet. So I'm completely on board with you there. Whoever's left between Suggs and Green is the right pick there. And then at number 5, Orlando, they're in a great spot. I know it doesn't seem like it because, they've traded away Evan Fournier, they traded away Vucevic, but they are in a good spot with Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, Mo Bamba. And I think if they add a guy like Jonathan Kuminga, who is another great forward defender, who I think alongside Jonathan Isaac would be 2 guys that are very, very tough to score on, I think that'd be the right pick there for them. I think he's exactly what they need. He's a young guy. He has a lot to prove still, but I think he's one of the better players in this draft, and I think that's who they'll go with.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. And what a trade, when we look back at that, the Bulls trading, getting Nikola Vucevic. You talk about a one-sided trade. Orlando won this trade hands down because
you think you don't think the Bulls next season with Vuce and Levine? I think we got to wait it out.
You look at Chicago. They could have had the 8th pick. They could have added more young talent to what they have, and they lost out on the 8th pick. You trade for Nikola Vucevic, you better have damn well made the playoffs. And the Bulls, they failed. They failed to make the playoffs. Orlando is looking good with this Nikola Vucevic trade right now. Now, obviously, like you mentioned, Josh, it could change. If Vucevic and Levine are healthy and the Bulls do make the playoffs and then make a little run, maybe we look at it a little differently. But as of right now, the Orlando Magic are sitting pretty because, you look at they got the number 5th overall pick, which they could definitely use to draft Jonathan Kuminga. And then you also look at they got the number 8 pick as well. They could either use that 8th pick and trade down, or they could draft a star player at number 8, or they could use that number 8 overall pick in any trade assets they want. Like the Orlando Magic, clearly they're going to pick their number 5 guy at the 5th overall pick. They're obviously going to take Jonathan Kuminga. It's a no-brainer. But that 8th overall pick, I'm going to be very intrigued to see what Orlando will do with that number 8 overall pick because look they go both ways. They could either draft somebody at number 8, or they could look at somebody at number 8. They could trade down on the draft. Maybe they could look at a team that's maybe hovering around the middle. Maybe they could look at a team like maybe San Antonio or Indiana. Someone that's at 12 or 13. And if they want to trade up, they could say, hey, we'll be willing to trade down. We'll trade down to number 12 or number 13, and we could still get our guy there. Or I mean, hey, you could look at maybe your Oklahoma City Thunder. Maybe they could look at 8 and 16 and be like, hey, Sam Presti, would you like the 8th overall pick? We'll trade down and we'll take your 16th pick and, go from there and see what happens. But, Orlando is in very good hands with their 5th pick, who they'll most likely take Kuminga, and with the 8th pick, who could very well be either a Keon Johnson or a Jalen Johnson, or you could just use it in any trade you want.
Yeah, I think Keon Johnson's the right pick at 8. You look at their kind of their depth chart right now. You have Markelle Fultz is going to come back and be the starter. Cole Anthony as a 6th man. If you take Kuminga, he's probably going to run the 3, even though he's more of a 4. But Jonathan Isaac's going to run the 4, but they're not really true 3s and 4s. So we're kind of reaching the age of positionless basketball. So they're really just wings out there. But then you have Mo Bamba at the 5. The only thing they're really missing is a 2 guard. I could see a team trading for Terrence Ross this year. And then they have RJ Hampton, who can run the 2, but I think Keon Johnson would be a great pick there, because then you have young guys all over. You have a lot of potential on that team. I could see them trading it as well, trading it back. I would love to give them 16 and 18 to move up to 8. I love this top 5 though, because Scotty Barnes falls to 6, and I love Scotty Barnes, and OKC would definitely pick him up if he's available at 6. But you brought it up a little bit earlier about the Warriors, who are also a winner of this draft, getting 7 and 14, but they're in a very weird position because they do have their number 2 pick from last year, James Wiseman, but he's very tough to develop when you're still in a competing for a championship mode, because you still have Steph Curry, you still have Klay Thompson, you still have Draymond Green. They're not in a position to really develop him, because in order to develop him, you got to give him the ball a lot. He's got to get a lot of playing time, but they're looking to win, so you can't give him to that because he hasn't been in the league long enough. He doesn't know how to play with them yet. So what do you think they do with 7 and 14?
With 7 and 14, I think the Golden State Warriors are going to find a trade. I think they're gonna work something up, and I think they're gonna get a trade. I remember there was a chat in our Unwrapped Sports Chat basketball. There were some rumors of maybe Warriors with 7 and 14 could go after Pascal Siakam, and if they were to go after Pascal Siakam, I would love it. I would love that fit that he would have there. He would instantly fit in as a power forward spot. You can move Draymond Green to center, kind of play that small ball center kind of role, kind of like they did in their early years where they were winning when they won those championships. And, I just look at the Warriors are going to do something. They're not just going to draft guys at number 7 and number 14. That's just not who the Warriors are. Yeah, they've missed the playoffs the last 2 years, but for good reason, because of injuries. You look at Klay Thompson, he's been hurt the last 2 years. Steph Curry, he was hurt 2 years ago. He played like an MVP this year. And you also have to look at, there are a lot of stars that are disgruntled, that are frustrated. You look at Bradley Beal with the Wizards. They have the assets to do so. Damian Lillard in Portland. Because in my honest opinion, if I were the Portland Trailblazers, if I look at Andrew Wiggins, but the 7th pick and the 14th pick and another first-round pick, I love Dame Lillard, but that's pretty damn enticing, because you get 2 picks in the top 15, and you get a guy in Andrew Wiggins, and you get another pick. That's very enticing in my book, and it can help kickstart a rebuild with Chauncey Billups. So Warriors, they got a lot of options. They could either draft a player, or they could look at other guys and say, hey, you know what, Ben, if they want to go out to Ben Simmons, they could look at Ben Simmons and say, you know what, Ben, you don't have to be a number 2 option here. You don't have to be a number 1 option. You could go here to Golden State. You could be a number 3 guy. Hell, even possibly a number 4 guy. You don't have to have a lot of pressure on you. You don't have to take those jump shots. We'll just have you play kind of like more of a power forward. Just get the ball up in the post and, do what you do best. And then maybe put Draymond at center, have Draymond play center, and then have Ben Simmons play power forward, and then, see kind of what happens from there. Maybe sign a small forward in the offseason. You have Steph and Klay. That's a championship winner right there.
Yeah, I think the one thing that has been annoying me about all these Warrior trade scenarios is how James Wiseman is just kind of thrown in there as like, oh, he's just another player in the package. Like, he was the number 2 overall pick last year. He hasn't played too much basketball since he got to college, basically. But that dude can hoop. He can do a lot. He can even handle the ball. He can shoot. He's got to be developed, and I think that's a very enticing piece. I definitely agree with you that they trade these picks because, I mean, you draft them, then you're in between. You got a win now team, but you also got a lot of young talent that you want to develop for the future. Like you got to pick, and I think they're going to side with winning now because their window's still open. I mean, they almost made the playoffs this year with just Steph Curry himself. And if I'm the Warriors, the one player I'm eyeing on is Domantas Sabonis. I think Indiana's got to make a decision between him and Miles Turner. I would personally pick Miles Turner over Sabonis. I just think he does more for them, not on the offensive end, but when you got a guy that protects the paint the way he does, which is just insane, and that can also stretch the floor for you, I think that's a guy you want to keep. And I think Sabonis will be a great fit in Golden State. I think that's a good pickup. Obviously, everyone's seeing the Siakam news that could possibly happen. I think Ben Simmons is a really nice fit as well, because he wouldn't have to do any scoring really, because they'd have Clay and Steph out there. He wouldn't have to worry about hitting shots anymore. I think they'd be okay with him taking 4 shots in a game when you got Steph and Clay out there.
Here would be, I'm sorry to interrupt. Here would be the only one thing I would see if the Warriors were to take players at the 7th and the 14th picks would only be to improve their bench. That would be the only reason why.
Veterans in this draft, like Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell would be the only reasonable pick because he's an older guy and he could bring you some great defense and scoring off the bench. That's the only guy I could see them selecting.
Yeah, definitely. Just that would be the only reason why I would see them taking players at 7 and 14, just to try and improve their bench. But they're in a situation, like you mentioned, Josh, they're in a win now mode. They're going to use those picks to trade, whether that's to trade for a player or hell, maybe even trade down. If they look at a player and say, you know what, we may have 7 and 14, but if we trade down to somewhere in like the mid-20s, our guy could still be at the mid-20s. We'll just trade down the mid-20s, get more picks, and go from there. But it'll be interesting to see what the Warriors will do. I think you and I both agree they're going to use those picks to get somebody, whether that's Pascal Siakam, whether that's Bradley Beal, or even Damian Lillard or Ben Simmons. They're going to use it to get somebody. And the one thing about the Warriors that's scary is whenever their GM makes trades, he always makes good ones. I haven't really seen a Warriors trade that's really backfired for them as of late. They've all been good or been washes where both teams have been successful. So we'll see what the Warriors will do at 7 and 14. I think it'll be very enticing to see what happens there. I think it'll obviously be drama on, sports shows like First Take and Get Up as well, because, they're also going to be talking about, they'll probably be like, oh, who do you think the Warriors are going to trade for at 7 and 14? But little do they know, they could have listened to this podcast here already, and we would have already tell them, hey, they might go with these guys.
Yeah, I think this draft has a potential to be one of the craziest ones. I mean, we both think Cleveland has a chance to move back. Sam Presti's got something up his sleeve. Golden State's looking to move for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see. But that'll do it for this show. Before we go, quick shout out to the sponsors again, mybookie.ag, code USN100. Definitely some good games coming up. So if you're looking to gamble, make sure you do that. Doubles your first deposit up to $1,000. And if you're hitting the gym like we know Connie's doing on vacation for sure, make sure you go to RxHemp, get your CBD creams, use code RxHemp-USN to get 10% off your first order. And also Patreon. Make sure you guys sign up for that because I believe we're giving away a Mark Ingram jersey, if I'm not wrong. But that's something you definitely want to get in on, only $10 to get your name entered into that. Matt, got anything to plug?
I got my Twitter handle down below at Matt_Skura, Instagram at Matt_Skura20, and check out a podcast. We are at Great Frank Caleb Con. I have a podcast called MCS Real Sports Podcast, talk all things NBA, NFL related. We're available everywhere. I also have a link in the bio and my Instagram that gives the links to where the podcast is available. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. It's available everywhere. Josh, it's been a pleasure. Pleasure to be on here to fill in for Anthony. Anthony, if you're watching this, I hope you're proud. I hope I filled your spot in pretty good as a good co-host, and I hope you keep on looking at me in the near future. And I hope we get a good Game 5 tonight between the Suns and the Clippers. My bold prediction: Suns close it out tonight.
Yeah, I can see
as the words of Charles Barkley, guarantee Suns win.
Yeah, as for me, follow me on Twitter at Jolin_4. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Generational Sports. And Matt, thank you so much for joining me, man. And tune in next Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. See y'all then.